Commander Jake Arden sat in the cockpit of his starship, the Vanguard, watching the stars blink in the endless black space. His mission was simple: to survey the Zinthus system for any signs of hostile alien activity. It was a quiet sector, far from the busy trade routes, and the Terran exploration fleet had assigned him to gather data. He was alone on this mission. No backup, no reinforcements. Just him and his ship. "Everything's clear, Commander," his ship's AI, ORA, chimed in, its voice calm and steady. Jake leaned back in his seat and sighed, gazing at the monitors. It had been a long, uneventful journey. He was starting to miss the chaos of real action. As a young officer, Jake had always craved excitement. The dull hum of the ship and the silence of space were starting to feel, well, boring. He had almost fallen asleep when a sudden alarm blared throughout the ship, cutting through the quiet like a knife. "Alert! Unknown distress signal detected," ORA announced, the urgency in her voice pulling Jake out of his half-doze. Jake's eyes snapped open, his heart rate rising. He had been briefed on the possibility of encountering unknown alien species in this region, but he hadn't expected a situation to come up so quickly. He ran his fingers over the controls, bringing up the coordinates of the distress signal. It came from a location nearby, one of the outer moons of Zinthus. "Let's check it out," Jake muttered under his breath. He punched the coordinates into the system and steered the ship toward the source of the signal. As the Vanguard glided through space, Jake's mind raced. Was this a trap? An enemy ambush? Or a simple malfunction from a forgotten ship? He couldn't be sure, but he wasn't about to ignore a call for help. Within minutes, he arrived at the site. His heart skipped a beat as he saw what was causing the distress. A massive alien vessel, severely damaged, floated lifelessly in space. Its sleek, shining surface was marred with deep gouges and burning holes. Black smoke curled out of the ship's broken engines, and pieces of debris floated around it, evidence of a violent attack. Jake's breath caught in his throat. This wasn't just any ship. He recognized the markings, the elegant, flowing designs etched into the hull. It was a Serenthi warship. The Serenthi were one of the most powerful species in the galaxy. Tall, graceful, and technologically advanced, they were known for their isolation and pride. Few had ever interacted with them, and their society was strictly closed off to outsiders. The fact that one of their ships was in distress was a rare event, and Jake knew this could be his one chance to learn more about them. Without hesitation, Jake activated his ship's weapons systems. He was prepared for a fight, but his primary goal was to help, not to attack. Just as he was about to engage, another ship, this one much smaller, appeared from behind an asteroid. It was fast, aggressive, and closing in on the Serenthi ship. Jake's eyes narrowed. The attackers had returned for a second wave. "They're trying to finish off the Serenthi," Jake muttered. His mission didn't call for combat, but this was an exception. He couldn't just watch as the Serenthi were slaughtered. He flicked a switch, engaging his ship's weapons, and the Vanguard surged forward. A series of precise shots rang out, hitting the smaller ship's engines. It veered off course, its weapons disarmed. But the attackers weren't finished yet. They regrouped and began to circle the Serenthi vessel once more, clearly determined to finish the job. Jake gritted his teeth, hands steady on the controls. He wasn't about to let this happen. The Vanguard shot forward once more, its weapons cutting through space with deadly accuracy. He disabled the attacking ships with expert precision, forcing them to retreat into the blackness of space. When the battle was over, the silence was deafening. Jake let out a long breath, his pulse still racing. He had done it. The Serenthi ship was safe, at least for now. He guided the Vanguard closer to the damaged Serenthi vessel, and as he did, he caught sight of movement. A figure emerged from the smoke, the silhouette of a person, tall and regal. It was a Serenthi. The alien's iridescent skin shimmered faintly in the dim light, and its eyes locked onto Jake's ship. Jake's heart skipped a beat. This was no ordinary rescue. He had just saved someone important. Someone from a species that hadn't shown interest in humans for centuries. The figure stepped forward, raising a hand in a gesture of peace. It was then that Jake realized he hadn't just rescued a crew member. He had rescued the Serenthi Queen herself. Jake stood frozen at the controls of the Vanguard, staring at the Serenthi Queen as she slowly approached the hull of his ship. His mind was racing. He had heard of the Serenthi, of course. Their empire was vast, their technology unmatched, and their culture ancient and mysterious. But he never expected to find himself face to face with one of their most important figures. The Queen's figure grew clearer as she floated closer, her translucent, iridescent skin glowing faintly against the blackness of space. Her tall frame was adorned in regal armor, adorned with precious stones that shimmered like stars. She moved with grace and purpose, her eyes locked onto Jake's ship. Her expression was unreadable, but the aura of power surrounding her was undeniable. Jake's fingers tightened on the controls, unsure of what to do. He had just saved her life, but who knew what kind of consequences that might bring? The Serenthi were known to be fiercely independent, and even more so proud. Could they see this as a threat? Or would they be grateful? Commander Jake Arden. A voice echoed through the ship's comm system. It was clear, calm, and yet laced with an unspoken authority. This is Queen Vera of the Serenthi Empire. I request that you allow me to board your ship. There are matters we must discuss. Jake's breath caught in his throat. He quickly opened a channel, his voice steady despite the rush of thoughts flooding his mind. Of course, Your Majesty. Please, make yourself comfortable. I'll open the docking bay now. Moments later, the airlock of the Vanguard hissed open, and Jake moved quickly to meet the Queen. He had no idea what to expect, but he knew this was a moment that could change everything. When Queen Vera stepped through the airlock, Jake was struck by her presence. She was taller than he had expected, standing with her back straight and shoulders squared. Her long, silvery hair flowed like liquid metal, and her eyes, bright and fierce, regarded him with intensity. The room seemed to quiet around her, as if even the ship itself recognized her importance. Commander Arden, she began, her voice carrying the weight of someone who had seen much of the universe. I am in your debt. You have saved my life, and for that, you have my gratitude. Jake bowed slightly, a sign of respect, but he felt out of place. It was my duty, Your Majesty. No one should have to face death alone. Vera nodded slowly, her sharp eyes studying him. Your duty is more than I expected of a human. Few would have taken such a risk to save someone they knew so little about. Few would have even dared to act when faced with danger. Jake tried not to squirm under her gaze. I was just doing what seemed right at the moment. I didn't think about the consequences. Vera studied him for a long moment before she spoke again. You are a rare one, Commander. Many in your place would have hesitated or even run, but you did not. And for that, I must thank you in a way that my people would understand. Jake furrowed his brow, sensing there was more to this than a simple expression of thanks. What do you mean, Your Majesty? Vera's gaze softened, though her posture remained rigid. You are a human, and your species is not one I am familiar with. But your actions, they speak volumes about the strength and honor of your kind. I am not just thanking you for your rescue. I am offering you something far more valuable. Jake's mind raced. What do you mean by that? The Queen's eyes sparkled with an emotion that Jake couldn't quite place, something between curiosity and respect. I offer you an alliance, a bond, a promise between our peoples. You have proven yourself to be capable, brave, and willing to do what is necessary. These are qualities my people respect, and they are qualities I respect. Jake was taken aback. This was far beyond what he expected. An alliance? With the Serenthi Empire. The consequences of such an offer were unimaginable. It could mean peace or war. It could change the fate of humanity forever. Before he could find the right words, Queen Vera continued. But there is more. It is not only an alliance I offer, Commander. I offer you something that only a few have ever received. a chance to stand beside me, as an equal, as a partner. A marriage between us would symbolize the joining of our peoples. Jake's heart skipped a beat. A marriage. Was she serious? He couldn't believe his ears. The Queen was proposing something far more personal than an alliance. But why him? Why a human? Queen Vera must have seen the confusion on his face, for she added, "I know this may be unexpected, but your actions, your bravery, they have touched something in me. And I believe that together we could build a future for both our species." Jake stood there, unsure of how to respond. He had never imagined his life would take such a turn. But one thing was clear. His actions had set something in motion, something that could change not only his life, but the fate of humanity itself. The words hung in the air between them, heavy and uncertain. Jake could hardly believe what Queen Vera had just proposed. A marriage. To her, the idea seemed impossible, but there was no mistaking the sincerity in her voice. She wasn't joking or making an offer out of duty. She had meant every word. Jake had heard stories about the Seranthi, but nothing had prepared him for the reality. Their culture, their people, everything about them was so different from humanity. The idea of a union between the two races felt as foreign as anything he had ever imagined. But before he could gather his thoughts, Queen Vera spoke again, her voice calm and steady. "I understand your hesitation, Commander. You are a human. You have lived a different life from mine. But the Seranthi Empire is a vast and complex society, and it is through partnerships such as this that we have thrived." Jake listened closely, trying to understand the deeper meaning of her words. "I'm not sure I'm the right person for this, Your Majesty. I'm just a soldier. I don't know anything about ruling an empire or leading a people." Vera's expression softened slightly. "It is not the title you hold, Commander, but the qualities within you. Strength, bravery, honor. These are the things that matter most to my people. I have seen these qualities in you. Your actions speak louder than any words." Jake remained silent for a moment, taking in her words. He had always considered himself just an ordinary man, doing his duty as best as he could. But now he was being asked to step into a role that he didn't understand. Could he truly be the partner of an alien queen? Could he help lead a species that had never before shown interest in humans? Before he could respond, Vera led him out of the command center to a large open balcony on the ship. The view was breathtaking. Below them, the stars stretched across the sky like a sea of diamonds, and in the distance, the planet Seranthus, the jewel of the Seranthi Empire, hung like a giant orb of swirling clouds and blue oceans. It was both beautiful and humbling. "You see, Commander," Vera said, turning to face him, "the Seranthi Empire is not like yours. We have no need for diplomacy or petty politics. We are a people of strength. But we are also a people who value unity and respect. It is only through such bonds that we can grow and evolve." Jake looked out at the planet, trying to imagine what it would be like to live among the Seranthi. He could see the majesty of their world, the towering cities, the advanced technology. It was a civilization that had endured for thousands of years, a species that had shaped its destiny with pride and determination. But they had never been allies with humans, and the thought of bridging that gap was overwhelming. "I'm not sure I understand," Jake said quietly, looking back at Vera. "How can I, a human, become part of your world? We're so different." Vera smiled, her expression thoughtful. "Differences do not have to divide us, Commander. In fact, they can make us stronger. My people have never before formed such a bond with another species, but I believe that with you, we can change that. Your humanity brings something new, something fresh to the table. It is through unity, not uniformity, that we will find strength." Jake nodded slowly, still processing everything. He had been trained to lead soldiers, to fight for his people. But this was something different. The weight of responsibility was much greater. If he accepted her offer, he wouldn't just be representing humanity. He would be standing at the side of a powerful and ancient race, one that could shape the future of the galaxy. I don't know what to say, Your Majesty, Jake admitted, feeling the gravity of the situation. This is beyond anything I've ever imagined. Vera's gaze softened, and for a moment, she seemed almost human. You don't need to have all the answers right now, Commander, but you must understand this. The future of both our peoples could depend on what we do next. Jake felt the weight of her words. This wasn't just about him anymore. It wasn't just about her. The fate of two entire species could be shaped by this decision, and that decision rested with him. I will need time to think, Your Majesty, Jake said, his voice steady despite the storm of thoughts in his mind. I can't make such an important decision on the spot. Vera nodded, understanding. Take all the time you need. But know this. The offer remains. When you are ready, I will be here. Jake stood silently for a moment, staring out at the stars, lost in thought. He had always known that one day his life would change, but he never imagined it would change like this. As he looked out at the beautiful, unknown world of the Serenthi, he couldn't help but wonder if this was the beginning of something greater than he had ever dreamed. Jake sat in his quarters aboard the Vanguard, staring out the small window at the endless void of space. He had spent the last few days thinking over Queen Vera's proposal, but every time he tried to wrap his mind around it, he felt more uncertain. A marriage. It seemed like something out of a dream, or a nightmare. How could he, a human soldier, form a marriage bond with the ruler of the Serenthi Empire? The implications were too big to ignore, and yet, the more he thought about it, the more it seemed like the only path forward. The door to his quarters slid open, and Aura, the ship's AI, appeared on the screen, her calm voice breaking through his thoughts. Commander Arden, she began, Queen Vera has requested your presence on the bridge. She wishes to speak with you. Jake sighed and stood up. He wasn't ready to make a decision, but he knew that avoiding this conversation would only make things worse. He straightened his uniform and made his way to the bridge. When he arrived, Queen Vera was already there, standing near the command center, her expression serious. Her silvery hair shimmered as she turned to face him, and her deep violet eyes seemed to pierce right through him. Commander, she said, her voice smooth but firm, I understand that you are conflicted. I did not expect you to make a decision right away. But I believe that it is time we discuss this matter in more detail. It is important that you understand what this bond would mean for both of our peoples. Jake nodded, his mind still racing. I've been thinking about it, Your Majesty. I still don't fully understand what this would mean. For me, for humanity, and for the Serenthi. This isn't just an alliance. It's much more than that. Vera's gaze softened for a moment. You are correct. This is not a simple political arrangement. This bond, this union, would represent the future of both our species. We are two very different races, Commander. Our cultures, our values, our ways of life are worlds apart. But that does not mean we cannot find common ground. Jake remained silent, trying to process her words. He had heard that the Serenthi were proud and independent. They had never shown much interest in forming alliances with other species. And yet, here he was, being asked to help bridge that gap. What exactly do you envision, Your Majesty? Jake asked, his voice steady despite the swirling thoughts in his head. How would this marriage work between our people? Vera took a step closer, her tone serious but not unkind. It would be a union of strength. Together, we would form a powerful alliance that would benefit both our species. You are a human, but you are also a leader. You have the strength and courage to stand beside me. I do not ask this of you lightly, Commander, but I believe that you and I together can lead our peoples into a new era. Jake could feel the weight of her words. She wasn't just asking for a partnership. She was asking for something far deeper, a shared future. This wasn't a decision that could be made quickly. He would have to think carefully about everything it meant. What about the Serenthi people? Jake asked. What do they think of this? I mean, you said yourself that your people value strength above all else. What if they don't accept a human, someone from a different species, at your side? Vera's expression became more serious. I will not force this upon my people, Commander. They must accept you, and that cannot be rushed. But I am their queen. They will follow my lead. The question is not whether they will accept you, but whether you are ready to accept them, and me. Jake took a deep breath. He had always been a man of action, a soldier who followed orders without hesitation. But this was different. This wasn't about following orders or winning a battle. This was about the future of two entire species, and the future of his own life. I don't know if I'm ready for this, Jake admitted, his voice quiet but filled with honesty. I'm not a politician, Your Majesty. I'm just a soldier. I've never thought about ruling anything, let alone leading an entire people. I don't know how to be the partner of a queen. Vera's eyes softened as she stepped closer. You are already a leader, Commander. You've proven that in your actions. And it is not about ruling. It is about building something together. We both have strengths that the other does not. Together, we can create something stronger than either of us could alone. Jake felt a weight in his chest. He had never been one to back down from a challenge, but this was unlike anything he had ever faced. It wasn't just a battle for survival. It was a fight for unity, for a future that was unknown. Vera smiled, as if she could read his thoughts. Take your time, Commander. I will not rush you. But know this, when you are ready, I will be here, and we will face whatever comes together. Jake stood there, looking into her eyes, trying to find the answer that felt right. He wasn't sure yet, but one thing was certain, his life, and the fate of humanity, would never be the same again. Days passed as Jake continued to think over Queen Vera's offer. The decision weighed heavily on him. Every time he looked out the window of the Vanguard, he saw the stars beyond, each one a distant world full of possibilities. He couldn't stop wondering what his place in the future would be. Could he truly become a part of Saranthi history? Could he, a human, help lead a galaxy-shaping alliance? He had spent years serving in the Terran fleet, focused on missions and battles. But this was different. There were no weapons involved, no enemy to fight. There was only a choice that could change everything for both humanity and the Saranthi. It wasn't just a decision about power or politics. It was about trust, partnership, and a shared vision for the future. One evening, as Jake sat in his quarters, staring at the holographic map of the galaxy, the door to his room opened. He turned to see Queen Vera standing in the doorway, her expression calm but serious. She didn't wait for him to speak before she walked in, her presence filling the room. I see you've been thinking, she said, her voice soft but firm. Jake nodded. I've been thinking a lot. I can't deny that what you're asking is overwhelming. It's not something I ever imagined. But the more I consider it, the more I realize something. You're right. This isn't just about us. It's about both of our peoples. Vera stepped closer, her gaze never leaving him. You understand now, don't you? The power of unity. What we could accomplish together. We could change the future, Commander. Not just for us, but for all those who will follow in our footsteps. Jake felt a tightness in his chest. Her words resonated deep inside him. He had always believed in the strength of humanity, in the power of individuals to make a difference. But what Vera was talking about was far bigger. It was about building something that could last beyond their lifetimes, something that would shape the history of the galaxy. You've given me a lot to think about, Jake said, his voice steady. But I'm ready. I'm ready to take the next step. Vera's eyes softened, and for the first time, Jake saw a hint of relief in her expression. Are you certain, Commander? This is not a choice that can be undone. Once we unite, it will change everything. Jake took a deep breath. He wasn't just choosing for himself anymore. He was choosing for humanity, for the future. And in a way, he was choosing for the Saranthi as well. I'm certain, he said. I believe in this. I believe in what we can do together. I believe in us. Vera nodded, a small smile tugging at the corner of her lips. Then it is done. For a moment, there was silence between them, as if the weight of the decision hung in the air. The stars outside the window seemed to shine brighter, as if they were witnessing a turning point in history. Vera moved closer to him, and Jake could feel the gravity of the moment. She stood before him, tall and graceful, her presence commanding yet calm. We begin this journey together, Commander, and I promise you, it will be a journey like no other. Jake nodded, feeling the enormity of her words. He had no idea where this path would lead, but he knew one thing for sure. It was the path he was meant to take. As he stood there, facing the Serenthi Queen, Jake felt a sense of purpose that he had never experienced before. He was no longer just a soldier on a distant mission. He was part of something bigger, something that could change the course of the future. We'll face it together, he said, his voice firm with resolve. For both our peoples. Vera smiled fully now, her eyes gleaming with a mixture of hope and excitement. Yes, together. And just like that, everything changed. The alliance between humanity and the Serenthi Empire was no longer just a dream. It was a reality. A reality that would shape the future of the galaxy. The decision was made. But now the real work began. Jake had thought that once he made up his mind, everything would fall into place. But now that he had agreed to unite with Queen Vera, he realized just how much lay ahead. This wasn't a simple political alliance or an easy partnership. This was the beginning of something that would affect both their peoples for generations to come. He stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, looking out at the stars, trying to focus on the task ahead. The weight of leadership was starting to settle on his shoulders. He wasn't just a soldier anymore. He was becoming part of something much larger. And he couldn't afford to let fear or doubt hold him back. Vera appeared at his side, her regal presence as commanding as ever. "Commander, we have much to do," she said, her voice calm but filled with purpose. "The future of both our species depends on the choices we make now. It is time to take the first steps toward building this bond." Jake turned to face her, his mind still racing. "I know, but where do we start? We can't just announce a union and hope things work out. There are so many factors to consider. How do we make this work?" Vera's eyes gleamed with confidence. "We begin with our people. We must show them that this is not just a political move. This is a chance for both of us to grow, to learn from one another. Our cultures are different, but that does not mean we cannot find common ground. We will take it one step at a time, Commander. We will build trust first, and everything else will follow." Jake nodded, still unsure but willing to follow her lead. "I understand. But how do we convince them? What if the Serenthi don't accept this? What if they resist?" Vera's expression softened, though her resolve remained strong. "I do not expect all of my people to accept this right away. Change is never easy. But I will stand beside you. My word holds great weight among the Serenthi. Once they see that I believe in this, they will follow." Jake wasn't so sure. He had seen how powerful tradition could be, how deeply it was rooted in every civilization, including his own. But there was something about Vera's confidence that gave him hope. She was a queen who had led her people for centuries. If anyone could make this work, it was her. As they spoke, a message came through on the communications panel. It was from the Terran fleet, and Jake knew that it was time for the next step. He had to report back to his superiors, to explain the situation and tell them about his decision. Jake's heart pounded as he accepted the message. "This is Commander Jake Arden of the Vanguard," he said into the comm. "I have an important update for Fleet Command." There was a brief pause before the voice of his commanding officer came through. "Commander Arden, this is Fleet Admiral Barnes. We've been receiving reports about your mission. What's the status? Is everything proceeding as planned?" Jake took a deep breath before responding. "Admiral, I have made a decision. I've formed an alliance with Queen Vera of the Serenthi Empire." There was a long silence on the other end, and Jake could almost hear the shock in the Admiral's voice when he spoke again. You've done what? Are you telling me that you're forming an alliance with the Seranthi? The same Seranthi who have ignored all human contact for centuries. Jake nodded, though he knew that his words would be met with disbelief. Yes, Admiral. I believe it's the right decision. This is about more than just us. It's about the future of both our peoples. Admiral Barnes's voice became more measured. I understand, Commander. This is a significant development. We'll need to discuss this further when you return to Earth. But for now, stay in contact with us. Keep us informed of any changes. I will, Admiral, Jake said, feeling the weight of the responsibility on his shoulders. I'll keep you updated. The connection ended, and Jake sat back in his chair, his mind swirling with thoughts. He had just informed the highest levels of military command about his decision. There was no turning back now. His life, his career, and the future of humanity were all tied to this alliance. The pressure felt overwhelming. Vera's voice broke through his thoughts. You did well, Commander. It is only a matter of time before the rest of your people come to see the benefits of this partnership. Jake looked at her, his resolve slowly building. I hope so, Your Majesty. I really do. The sound of footsteps approached, and Jake turned to see several of the Seranthi diplomats entering the room. They were tall, their skin shimmering with a silvery glow, their eyes sharp with intelligence. They were the representatives of Seranthi culture, and Jake knew that winning their trust would be just as important as winning the hearts of his own people. Vera stepped forward to greet them, her demeanor calm and confident. We have much to discuss, she said to the Seranthi diplomats. It is time to begin the journey together. Jake watched as they exchanged words in their native language, realizing just how far he had come from being just a soldier in the fleet. He was now part of something bigger, something that could shape the future of the galaxy. And while he didn't know what challenges lay ahead, he knew one thing for sure. He was ready to face them, alongside Queen Vera and the Seranthi. The days following Jake's decision were filled with intense activity. The Seranthi and Terran representatives met frequently, exchanging ideas and plans for the future. The task ahead of them was monumental, but Jake could sense the beginning of something great. There were still many challenges to overcome, but the first step had been taken. Both species were committed to making this work. On the bridge of the Vanguard, Jake stood beside Queen Vera as they watched the stars outside. It was a quiet moment, the hum of the ship the only sound as they both reflected on the journey ahead. The alliance is growing, Vera said softly, her voice thoughtful. But there are still many hurdles to clear. Jake nodded. I know. There are some people who won't accept this. There will be those who question our decision. Vera turned to him, her expression firm but understanding. Every great change is met with resistance, Commander, but we cannot be afraid of it. We must stand strong in the face of doubt. Jake felt the truth of her words. He had seen resistance before, in battles and wars, but this was different. This wasn't about fighting an enemy with weapons. This was about overcoming fear and uncertainty, about building something new. It was about trust and unity, something that couldn't be forced. It had to be earned, step by step. The door to the bridge slid open, and several Terran officers entered, including Admiral Barnes. There was a sense of urgency in their faces as they approached. Commander, Admiral Barnes said, his voice serious. We've received reports from several factions back on Earth. There's a lot of debate about this alliance. Some are in favor, but others. I know, Jake interrupted, his tone calm but resolute. I expected this. There are always people who resist change, but we can't let that stop us. Admiral Barnes exchanged a glance with the other officers before nodding slowly. I'm not saying I disagree with you, Commander, but you need to be prepared for the political fallout. This isn't just about military strategy. It's about the future of humanity. I understand, Admiral, Jake replied. But we've already taken the first steps. The Seranthi are willing to work with us. They believe in this partnership. If we back down now, we risk losing everything. Vera stepped forward, her presence commanding as always. "The future of both our peoples depends on our unity, Admiral. We cannot afford to falter." There was a brief silence as everyone took in her words. The room felt heavier with the weight of the decision they had all made. Jake knew it wouldn't be easy, but he also knew that the path they were on was the right one. "We'll face this together," Jake said firmly. "This isn't just about me or Queen Vera, it's about all of us. And we will prove that our people can stand united." Admiral Barnes gave a short nod. "I'll relay your message to Earth Command. We'll have to make our case to them, but I'll make sure they understand what's at stake." Jake looked at Vera, who gave him a small but reassuring smile. "Thank you, Admiral," he said, turning back to the group. "We'll need to work closely with the Serenthi diplomats to create the next steps. This is just the beginning." The officers nodded and left the bridge, leaving Jake and Vera alone once again. The quiet of space seemed to wrap around them, a silent witness to the weight of their decisions. "You know, Commander," Vera said, her voice soft, "this could be the beginning of a new era. An era where our peoples are no longer strangers, but allies. The galaxy could be ours to shape, if we are strong enough to see it through." Jake smiled, the enormity of their mission sinking in. He had never imagined his life would take such a turn. But now, standing beside Queen Vera, he saw the truth in her words. This was a moment in history, a moment that would echo across the stars for generations. "We will face the challenges," Jake said, determination in his voice. "We will build this future together." Vera's eyes sparkled with a mix of hope and pride. Together. As they stood there, watching the stars stretch endlessly before them, Jake felt a sense of peace that he had never known. He had taken the first step into the unknown. But now, with Queen Vera by his side, and the support of both humanity and the Serenthi, he knew they could face whatever came next. The galaxy was vast, and the future was uncertain, but they would face it as one. And that, he realized, was all that mattered.